Hey ladies and gents, it says Dewey's here. It's really early in the morning. It's like 5:30 in the morning. But I wanted to show you. I just put the finishing touches on my Aztec temple. Check it out. That's the backlighting. And the last touches that I put on it was that I added some calendar to the doorway, and then I added some golden snakes to the main bad guy right there, Skeletor, and he has a bunch of snakes emanating from his right hand, which makes him look incredible and incredibly menacing. He's got the ram staff on his left hand. He's got the horns coming up. So he is the head of this cult, this temple cult. And there's a human being sacrificed. So see what he looks like. There are a couple priests, and then up here I've got Hera Serpenstein, Mythic Legion's character, and over here I have Is Ramirez, and they're coming to the rescue of the fella who is being sacrificed by the Aztec cult. See, it's really early, so the lighting's not that great because the sun hasn't come up yet. So I decided to do a video, a little something different. Let me show you above the Aztec temple. I've got all the Aztec God-inspired Jesse Hernandez vinyls going up. And I was just thinking the other day, actually last night, pretty late last night, about the significance of why I collect action figures, and why this display is compelling to me. And part of the reason is, as I may have mentioned a few times, maybe more than a few times, I grew up in an apocalyptic cult. Yeah, it was a Christian fundamentalist apocalyptic cult. It wasn't like a bad cult like Jim Jones, where somebody's going to have people drink poison Kool-Aid and people are going to die, or they're going to end up wearing Nikes and, waiting and committing mass suicide because a comet's going to come by. But it was very, very focused on the world ending. I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to hang out in my toy room for a little bit because I don't want to wake up my family. They're sleeping now. My wife and I are working from home because of the whole shelter-in-place thing. And my kids are home from school. So we're going to walk through the valley of the shadow. So you go to my toy room. So yeah, they're working from home. We're all fine. Very thankful to be privileged enough to be able to shelter in place here and not have to go to work, and to be able to work remotely. So I wanted to talk about the significance of all this stuff I've collected, all this pop cultural stuff. And I think it does have something to do with growing up in that cult, because I remember that things that I liked as a kid, like, I like Spider-Man. I wasn't allowed to, engage in such frivolous pursuits. I went to a Christian school. Like I said, the cult was, it was, aside from the fact that it was constantly being bombarded with preaching about the end of the world is at hand, and I think that was pretty psychologically damaging, especially to kids, because if you always think the world's going to come to an end, why should you do your homework? Why should you do exercise? Why should you pass up on dessert? Right? As a kid, why should you prepare for college? Why should you think about anything other than just preparing for the end of the world and going to heaven and seeing all the infidels punished in the fiery furnace and all that kind of fire and brimstone stuff that is really just very, very controlling. So anyway, I used to have a lunchbox that had Spider-Man and had all the Marvel superheroes on it. And I remember they took that away from me because they said, I don't know if my mom bought it at a secondhand store or whatever, but they said that, those sorts of characters were evil, and, I shouldn't have them on a lunchbox. And so everything that was worldly, that had to do with the world, including, like innocent comic book characters, like Spidey and Superman and all that, were really frowned upon, so much so that a little kid couldn't have a lunchbox with it. So they took that away from me. They took wasn't allowed to watch TV, wasn't allowed to go to movies, wasn't allowed to listen to worldly music, it was called, like rock and roll or whatever, and didn't have any toys. You remember in the 80s, some of you that are older, all the moral panics about Masters of the Universe and He-Man and Skeletor and all of that being, kids running around saying that they were greater than Jesus. I don't think any of that really happened. I think it was just something for preachers to stand up there on the pulpit and sort of talk about, to control folks and to, not allow them to, I don't know, just have a normal childhood, enjoy themselves. So there was a little bit of that. And I think part of my collecting is I left the cult at 15, and it's a bit of a rebellion against that and saying, yeah, you know what, I can have whatever, fictional characters that I want, right? I can kind of have a second childhood that I missed out on. And so I think that's part of this collecting obsession, I guess you could say. Part of the fun, getting to do that. And then the other thing is that I think on a psychological level, a lot of these characters, especially the ones created by the Four Horsemen, is that basically they're, gods and monsters. They create gods and monsters, and you've got Gygor and Ramathor and Zethius, all of these in ancient cultures would have been worshipped, I think, as deities. And so I think part of it is that's part of the compelling thing, because if you grow up and you're taught that there's a vengeful God up there that could destroy you at any time, that having these little tiny representations of gods and monsters that you can control is psychologically appealing in a way. So I think that may also have something to do with it. I have a cast of thousands that I can control, that my imagination can control, and I can choose who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And the other thing is that once, I left the cult when I was 15. It was the first chance I was able to get out of there. I just took it, and thankfully my parents were cool enough that they didn't do what a lot of other parents did, which was they had this process that they called taking out from under the blood, which meant that if you left the cult, that you'd be basically cursed, that you would no longer be covered by Jesus' blood, which would mean that terrible things would happen to you, right? Like, get cancer, or, we heard, oh, this person got taken out from under the blood, so they ended up dying in a car accident, and all these terrible things would happen to you if you left the cult. And so it was, when you're a kid, you believe these things, that you're taught these things just from a really, really early age. That's part of your worldview. And so it took me a while, and but after I kind of left, then not you leave the cult and stuff, but it still sort of takes a while to deprogram, and find alternatives, that especially the sense of community that you miss out on once you're gone, because like I said, the people in the cult, they weren't evil, they were good people. They're just misguided and controlled, and but once you get out, you start meeting people from different religions, different backgrounds, and then you find out, hey, this wasn't the one true way, like I was taught, that you had to be part of this, and otherwise you'd perish. Look at this. This is one of my friends that I've met through toys. Nate March designed this figure. It's Light Hope, and he's Mormon, and he's a great guy. And I think you can find like some little elements of the Mormon temple, perhaps, or something reminiscent of it. He was definitely sort of influenced by that. But you meet different from. You have to create your own community once you leave that, because that's something that you miss out on, because the folks that you used to be able to hang out with will no longer hang out with you. And even though I don't think I was necessarily cursed and taken out from under the blood, people were not to associate with me, and because I wasn't part of the group anymore. So yeah, I met a lot of wonderful friends through this. The Nate comes to mind. He's Mormon. I'm not Mormon, but he's obviously a great guy. And let's see who else. Jesse Horsley. Look at that. He made this custom for me. I bought this custom from him. Jess Horsley had a figure named after him. One of the Anatherians, Sajor, basically the Four Horsemen took, and they named it after him. They just reversed some of the letters, and I don't think it's this guy. I think it's the red guy. If I'm mistaken, Jess, forgive me, but he's a preacher, a Christian preacher, and he's the kind of Christian preacher that really restored my faith in Christianity, because he's not judgmental. He's all about coming from a place of love and acceptance, and not the sort of rigid fanaticism that I was used to. So there's people like that involved in the toy collecting hobby that I've met. A lot of people who actually make toys are, spiritual in one way or the other, or if they're not, at least kind of deep people. So I've met some wise men, I've met some sages, and they've really, really enriched my life, and they've helped, create this feeling of community that I lost when I did leave the cult. Wow, this is getting to be a super long video, super personal. I've never done one like this, so I hope you guys don't hate it. I know it's a kind of a, controversial thing to talk about religion, but maybe because of, uh, folks in my old church are right now really, they always beat the drums for the end of the world, but right now, like some of them are refusing to, shut down the churches or shelter in place, and it's terrible. This is not the end of the world. This may be a pandemic, but there've been other pandemics before. It's something that we'll get through. I think. Some people will die, but they're always using any sort of opportunity to beat those drums and telling people to get together and you know um, not listen to the government. So anyway, wow, hey, this is a long rambling video. It's early in the morning. I'm probably not thinking this through, but I'll listen to this later and see if it makes any sense. And maybe I'll post it. And if it wasn't your cup of tea, I apologize. It's more personal, and thinking about why I enjoy all these gods and monsters and characters in this world. That the most of my stuff is Four Horsemen created, so that's ironic. They bring us the Toypocalypse, and the Four Horsemen are a symbol of the end of the world in Revelations. But so maybe I traded one cult for another, the toy cult. But it's much more enjoyable, much more accepting, and I'm glad to have it. I enjoy these, and people think that toy collecting is frivolous and whatever, but if it brings you joy and it helps you through tough times, and if it makes life more fun and helps you connect with other people, I think it's a good thing. All right, well, I'm gonna let you guys go. Like I said, the sun hasn't even come up yet today, and I had to talk in this low tone of voice because I didn't want to wake my family. But hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. Let me know, comment on hey, never do this again, or we didn't mind hearing this long rambling diatribe that had nothing to do with reviewing actual figures. All right, is the whiz. I'm gonna go back to sleep, I think. All right, signing out.